coming out of the woodworks, Coach Les Miles. I feel like we hadn't heard from him, feels like for 3 years, at least for me here, Blake. But no, Coach Miles coming out in the news today, slow off season. I mean, us who follow college baseball, it's not. But for most people, Les Miles suing Louisiana State University for his 37 wins. He's under the 60% winning percentage that he needs to get into the Hall of Fame. From working with him closely, I know that means a lot. We have Blake Ruffino from RU Serious Sports joining us to discuss. Blake, what is going on in the Hammond area today, brother?
Not much, man. Just sorry about my attire. I just got done working out and came on here with you and then had some radio hits. So I'm sorry that I look like trash, but nevertheless, we're here. We got some good things that we need to talk about. Look, Dave, I mean, I agree with you on, Les wanting to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm glad to be here, and I'm sure this is what, we're going to discuss about this a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So just some background on it. So I worked with Coach Miles for 2 years at Kansas, 2019 and the 2020 COVID year. So I spent a year and a half, 2 years with him. And then obviously Blake following LSU. So I reached out to Blake, obviously, when this came up. Just wanted to see from the LSU perspective. Me and him talked a little bit off air, but let him share his thoughts from an LSU perspective. Let's get right to it. Black and white. Should Les Miles, when you factor in his whole career starting at Oklahoma State through LSU and his 2 seasons at Kansas, should he be in the College Football Hall of Fame?
Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer on the field? On the field, no. Is he a fifth-time ballot Hall of Famer? Maybe, Dave. I mean, look, the dude, you cannot talk about a decade and a half's worth of college football and Les Miles' name not be brought up. The Mad Hatter going for it on fourth down multiple times against Florida and Tim Tebow. They win the game. Jacob Hester scores. You have the electric 2007 season with 2 losses. You had the 2011 season, the 9-6 game, and then the rematch. Now, obviously, LSU fans are clearly going to be pissed off at Les at how it ended and all that kind of stuff, and I get it. But, Dave, here's the truth, the way that I see it, and I'll talk about this tonight on our show, but the way that I see it is pretty simple. LSU vacated 37 wins into the Les Miles tenure because of a tackle named Vidal Alexander. A lot of people know about the Our Lady of the Lake. It's a lot of rival fans talk about, oh, you stole from a hospital. Well, Dave, I think that Les has a case here to get those wins back, and let me explain. You have the Sharon Lewis $100 million lawsuit that LSU literally just won about a month and a half ago, that it was determined in the filings of that court, in a federal court system, that Les Miles had no it was deemed, how did they say it? Guys, the interns, y'all have it. Baseless and unfounded is what they called it here, that he knew about the Our Lady of the Lake thing. Secondly, John Paul Funes, who was the CEO of the hospital, did federal time. It was also determined in that a court ruling in a federal court system that Les also had no knowledge of this going on. So, Dave, you've been in coaching. I mean, the likelihood that he knew is very high, but you got to prove it. At some point, you have to prove it. Now, with all of that being said, okay, the bottom line becomes there's other things that are out there about Les. The impropriety to his wife and allegedly trying to do things with students that are improper. You mean like other coaches in Baton Rouge have done before? Okay. See, what happened is last year LSU vacated those 37 wins. Les Miles did not. So LSU gave up those 37 wins because to save their hide, to save football, and then the whole Will Wade thing, it was all tied into one because of, Dave, the lack of institutional control that the NCAA was investigating LSU off of. In my legal background, I talked to a couple of attorneys today. I think he's got a case, and LSU fans are going to hate it. Now, the question becomes that you and I get to talk about, does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Dave, you're to a place at the current moment, though, I mean, how many times does a guy have to be proven that he had no knowledge of something before you say, okay, well, LSU, you gotta make a move here. I do think that LSU, in all retrospect, probably should have waited to vacate those wins because they still happened, right? Like it still happened.
That was my next question to you. Is the stupidest thing that we have in college football is the vacating of wins. Like nobody's like, yeah, man, it was a tough loss for them. Remember when they vacated that? No, people remember those exact games that happened back in those time frames.
Like, do you forget the 9-6 game?
No.
Okay. So with all due respect to you cannot, and I know that, like it would be one thing if you couldn't tell the story about Les Miles and his record stomp. Dave, you're talking about a guy in over a decade that averaged over 10 wins.
Yeah.
I mean,
Blake, what was probably the worst season it hit? Was it 14 or what, 08 maybe?
Yeah, I think it was either 14 or 15.
08, they were what, 8-5, 7-5?
Yeah, 8-5. They lost a lot, but, you come back and that's after a national championship, but he has 2011 in there. Yeah. And a lot of LSU fans are still mad because you couldn't cross the 50-yard line. I get all that. I'm just as pissed off as they are. But the bottom line was he competed for a national championship. I mean, he competed for 2 of them and won one.
And let's be honest, a team we'll bring up here probably in a minute to talk about because Les Miles has a background at Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State beats Iowa State that year and it's LSU Oklahoma State, Les Miles probably has a second national championship.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially very. And look, like the human part of that didn't come in. I mean, they legitimately had a plane where I think, they had a lot of people that passed and it was very unfortunate. And look, Dave, the bottom line is now I do think they got the best 2 teams in there. I think Alabama and LSU were the best 2 teams. But regardless of all of this being said, do I think on the field he deserves it? Yes. Now, there are some improprieties off the field that he's going to have to prove that he's innocent, unfortunately. I mean, I feel like that we should live in a society where you're innocent until proven guilty. It's not the case here. Everybody and their mama has gone out there and ran out there because of allegations and says, oh, he's guilty. Okay. Well, I want it to be proven, right? I want you to prove that this happened. Okay. It's like Dave, I could come on this airway and say, you know what, back in 2019, Dave Shumate punched me in the face. Is it true or is it not true? So there comes a point in place where if he's going to have to prove it, and if he can, great, and if he doesn't, we get the final answer to all this. So I know it seems like I'm playing both sides here, but I'm not. I mean, I legitimately think he's got a case here. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? No, but can you tell the story of college football without him? I don't think that you can.
And he was in the SEC, and I think you would attest to this too, Blake. He was a part of the SEC when it really became what it is today.
No doubt.
I know he benefited from Saban laying the foundation, but he really started hitting that stride when the SEC in 06 started reeling off their 12, 14, or 9, 10 national championships in a row from 06 to 13. I think Auburn was the team who finally dropped the ball.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, now I could be wrong. I'd have to look this up. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, he's got just as many wins against Saban more than anybody. He has 3.
Him and Gus Malzahn are tied.
Right. So, I mean, you get to a place where, look, man, he beat a national title Bama team that, by the way, just throwing this out there, 92 players on both of those teams combined got drafted.
Yeah.
92.
Yeah.
I mean, so, Dave, look, LSU fans are gonna hate me on this platform saying it, and tonight when we talk about it, the bottom line becomes, I need at some point when you have 2 federal court systems saying that he had no knowledge, a guy that served federal prison time over it, there comes a place in time that I'm like, okay, you've given me a lot of allegations, Title IX improprieties, LSU covered things up. And I'm not an LSU spokesperson, but there comes a point when you're alleging that these schools did all of these things. You can't fake the Our Lady of the Lake thing, but all of that gets unturned and you can't find that the head coach has any direct contact to that. So then who does? And I think that we just as a society, and I'm not trying to be political, but we have legitimately over the last decade said, hey, when someone goes on Twitter and says, this is what happened, sources, breaking. And by the way, it's why Les got fired at Kansas.
Yeah, you're guilty until proven innocent.
You're guilty until proven innocent. You talked about being on staff with him. The Sharon Lewis case is why he got fired. Okay, so let's stop right there. Not only was it deemed baseless and unfounded, Dave, she's got to pay back LSU's attorney fees. So not only was it that bad, she legitimately tried to sue them in a RICO lawsuit, which got, like, Dave, they legitimately told her that it was some of the baseless things that they have ever read in the court's history. This is a federal court system. Yeah. So it comes to a place where, okay, so the guy was fired. He didn't get a buyout that he, signed a contract on over an allegation that wound up being not true.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. And LSU, listen, tonight when we're live, Dave, every LSU fan's going to talk about how much they hate him. They hate him. They hate him. They hate him. That's good and dandy. Name a better coach other than Les Miles who is more accomplished than him. I'll wait.
Why? And I got to ask you, Blake. Obviously, you're down there in the trenches in Louisiana. Why is the hate there? You think it literally has to do with the 11 national championship game? Yeah. Say he wins that game. What's the perception of Les Miles in Baton Rouge?
I think it would have been better, but it definitely would have been better. But the lack of innovating offensively, Dave, I think was the big thing. Year after year, promising every single year, promising, never delivering on it. And look, LSU fans gave him a long leeway, okay, for him to change it. He just didn't innovate. Now, what's crazy about that, he goes to Kansas and he somewhat innovates, which people don't give him credit for, but he somewhat innovates. He gets a little bit more spread. Now, he goes toss dive every now and then, okay? Yeah, he's going to go toss dive, but he innovates. So I think that's mainly the thing, because those LSU teams defensively had so many really good dudes that if you had any sort, like, for example, Dave, if LSU, who's been known for defensive prowess, had any of those defenses under the Brian Kelly or Ed Orgeron era, not only are you talking about national championships, you're talking about plural. Okay, and that's the microcosm of LSU. They can figure out one side of the ball with any head coach. They just can't ever put everything together, and that is going to be the bugaboo. And when they do, that happens. Okay, like when they do figure it out, horror happens. So that's the place where I think that, look, he's the most accomplished coach in LSU's history, whether people want to say he is or he isn't. He is. There just comes a time for me that I want to see these allegations playing out, because I can allege anything. Now, with the fan base and what your comments, and I know Chris is going to freak out when I say this, every comment that's going to be underneath here, Dave, I promise, is going to say this. Yeah, but I was at LSU at the time, and I know for a fact he did it. No, you don't. You know you don't. Okay, you need to, at some point you're going to have to start proving some stuff to me. Now I know I sound like a broken record, but and Dave, I wanted to be over with. We're talking, Dave. We're almost a decade into this.
Yeah,
like we're almost a decade into this case.
Yeah, so, it's wild. I mean, Les Miles' last year was what, the fourth game of the
2016? Yeah, Auburn, the Plains. Danny Etling can't complete a pass. Yep. Okay, so I mean, Danny Etling. How about this? Danny Etling has been in the league longer than my 5-year-old son has been alive, okay? But nevertheless, we're still fighting over court cases about Les Miles.
No, you're right. It's just you're ready for it to be over. That's why it's funny. You see his name pop up. It's like, oh, Coach Miles. Like, you forget. He's been so out of it now, really. Out of college football now for what, 4 full seasons. And even Kansas, it was kind of like he got fired or hired, but it really wasn't even talked about, honestly, too much. But I mean, to your point, like on the field, you can't deny the guy was bringing on talent wherever he was at. Oklahoma State,
no doubt,
LSU, and even Kansas, the classes we signed, I'll defend it to this day, all their best players they've had since Lance Leipold, and he's a master developer, no doubt about it. I think if you could combine Coach Miles' recruiting ability with Leipold's ability to run an organization and develop, you'd have something. Jalen Daniels, a Les Miles signee, Luke Grimm, all the best receivers they had, Daniel Highshaw, Devin Neal, all those guys, the best defensive players they have were Les Miles signees.
Well, but, I mean, no doubt. Well, and I think, Dave, what really hit home is Louisiana people, like, let me give an example. Louisiana people don't like being made fun of because of their culture. So, like, when the movie The Waterboy comes out, everybody thinks that that's what we sound like. Now, I do know some people that sound like that. I mean, we had a head coach that kind of sounds like that a little bit. But when he goes out, like I tweeted this out today, when he goes out on Columbus Day and talks about Italians, so I'm Italian. Dave, we have a lot of Italians that live here, a lot of paisans that live here. They don't take too kindly to him. So it was just those small little things that, like if Les Miles would have gotten whacked, the mafia, one of the 5 families would have come down to New York to whack him. Okay. They would have been justified because he said some quirky ass shit. Okay. Let's just be honest. He was a quirky dude. He said some quirky stuff. But the truth was LSU's culture, yes, was built somewhat by Nick. The true culture of LSU and what everyone perceives LSU to be was based off the back of Les Miles. Tough running game, defensive team, great on special teams. If you do not pay attention, they're going to do a fake field goal where Brad Cragthorpe is throwing over the head. The ball bounces, and you're picking it up, and you wind up beating Florida because, by the way, Jordan Jefferson, which nobody's going to say, has a broken pinky, and then Jarrett Lee comes in, and then it legitimately goes off, which set him up for 2011. So there's just so many things. If he would have gotten whacked, though, by one of those 5 families, it would have been the least surprising thing to any Italiana in the state. I'm just telling you that right now.
Dude, I always give Coach Miles credit this from an evaluation standpoint. He was the most detailed evaluator I'd ever been. He never wanted to see he'd get pissed if it was a highlight tape. He wanted to see the full evaluation tape, good, bad, ugly, where a lot of coaches that I've worked for would not be like, where's all the good plays? Like, they want to see I want to see what he can do. It's like, well, don't you want to see what he can't do as well? And Coach Miles would be an avid person. You mentioned special teams. Dude, that guy would sit in hours of special teams and have some fakes like in his back pocket for weeks. And then
no doubt.
He's like, he wants to run it.
And would practice them. And
look. Now, the thing that Coach Miles, hell, you talk to anybody, Damian Craig, and then dude practice 2.5, 3 hours, even during the
So that's what I was about to say. So
wore people down and
wore people down. Brandon Taylor, who's a great friend of mine, was number 18 on that 2011 team.
You've had him on the show multiple times.
Yeah. He, dude, 3 days, Dave, before they were 3 days before the national championship, they had a 3.5-hour practice. You want to know why you didn't cross now, again, that's on Les, okay, and we've established that. Okay, so you lost a national championship. You know what? The greatest of all time lost a national championship too. So, we move the goalposts so much here, man. Like, depending on who the person is, we move the goalposts, okay? I'm trying not to. Like, if I would have told you, Dave, I'm going to say this tonight, so I don't steal this from me, but I'm going to use this tonight. Name this LSU head coach. Was fired by LSU, got popped with level 1 recruiting violations. At the end of their tenure, had some offensive woes. Okay, didn't finish well. Got popped by the NCAA. Name that coach.
Yeah, where you go, Les Miles.
It's Will Wade.
Will Wade, yeah.
So the LSU fan base, okay, will say, Will Wade, the general. Well, okay. If you put them in a box and I give you no other details,
you just gave the sample, the allegations and
correct. The only difference is, okay, Les Miles, what he really has over him at the current moment is the sexual assault allegations.
Yeah.
That's what the truth is. Is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. But you can easily prove the Our Lady of the Lake stuff. I mean, Dave, let's just be honest. Rick Pitino had cocaine and hookers Okay, the FBI found cocaine and hookers at Louisville. The dude's still coaching. And we're talking about LSU and a level. The reason the vacated wins is because of Adal Alexander. Forget everything else. You had a coach that was getting investigated by the FBI. By the way, was also unfounded that Patino knew anything. What's the difference? So, look, I could spend, Dave, me and you could be here for 45 hours. I could go nonstop about Les. Tell you stories about Les. I remember going into the locker room with Brandon Taylor when we were high school seniors, and we walk in, and Les Miles is the first person to greet you, okay? And he goes, Brandon Taylor. You know how Brandon Taylor. Oh, did you – and it was the Florida game in 07.
Yeah.
And he goes, did you see how we pull that one off? He goes, Franklinton, the 985. And it was just corky. I'm like, this is the weirdest shit I've ever been a part of. But it was Les Miles, okay? It was LSU. I never experienced anything like that. I couldn't sit in my chair. Dave, the seat was rattling, right? Like you couldn't sit down. He helped build that. So,
Blake, you could attest. I don't know what Brandon Taylor thinks about him, but when I was a kid, Chevis Jackson was our corners coach. So Coach Miles and them in 07.
Now at Miami.
Now at Miami, signed with Nick Saban. Played majority of his career with Les Miles. Dude, he's like, I love Coach. I was like, what did y'all as players back then kind of just think of Coach Miles? Like, what y'all think of Coach Miles? He was like, dude, we thought he was quirky. They're like, we're not dumb. We thought he was quirky. But he was like, there was a part of it, though, that, like, he always had our back, and he was kind of our guy. Like, he was kind of like, people make fun of him. He's like, that would kind of rile us up a little bit. Kind of like, he's our guy. We wanted to go play our tail off for him. So he's like, all our guys when I was a player loved Coach.
Well, and I think, just one last thought on Les, but I think a big thing here too is when his players were getting talked down upon, he goes, you give those players a kiss on the mouth if you're a girl. And I'm like, that's the stuff that you miss about Les. The things that you don't. And look, it ended very badly. Let's just call it ended very badly for him. So, do I think in all of this, do I think he's got a case? Yes, I do. I think that no LSU fan is going to admit that. The real ones will, but it's just how I see it, Dave. There's got to come a point for me that we get past this, though. This has been a black cloud over the university for a decade. We're coming up on a decade, okay? So 2016. So it gets to a place where, man, I'm tired. I think LSU fans are tired of it all. So it sucks.
Let's get right to the point. Get you out of here. We talked a little Les Miles, just overall on the field accomplishments. Obviously, it's off the field stuff that has to be discussed. Give it to me. Is Les Miles a college football Hall of Famer?
Yes, in my opinion. If you're just asking on the field, yes, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
There you have it, folks. I would agree, too. You go back to the Oklahoma State rebuilding days, kind of set it up. He hired Mike Gundy, who hasn't left the place since. They've tried to a couple times, but he's kind of kept the train on the tracks.
Right.
Had the most successful coach in LSU history. He's had his seasons, but overall, it's the most successful coach in program history. Then he's Kansas time. If you're counting Oklahoma State, you obviously got to count the Kansas time, but it's towards the back end of his career. Health dwindling. COVID couldn't have came at a worse time for a program and himself. I think, like you said, on the field, absolutely. Is he a first ballot? No, but I do agree with you. Blake Ruffino, everybody from RU Serious Sports. Blake, I appreciate you taking the time, brother.
No problem, man. We'll talk soon.
Later, brother.